Hip shifting. This can be kind of a tricky concept to grasp. So if it feels confusing, don't worry. It confused me for a really long time too. All right, so when we are talking about hip shifting, it means that we are getting the pelvis to move over the femur, okay? Our femur sits right here in the acetabulum, and we want the ability for our femur to stay in one spot and then for our pelvis to move over our femur. This is not a huge movement, but it is something that we want to be able to happen. A lot of times we will get lumbar movement instead of actual movement at the pelvis. So that's one thing that we want to watch out for. That I really like to use to teach what it feels like to hip shift is a lateral hinge. You guys have been doing lateral hinges in the workouts. I just haven't really told you that you're kind of hip shifting when you are doing those. So a hip shift is when we have a closed chain movement, and that just means that the foot is on the floor. And what we are essentially doing is shifting over the hip and then coming out of it. So this other hip right here is kind of coming down, and then we're coming back up. Now, what we are not doing is just moving at the lumbar, so kind of like this motion right here, or letting the hip pop out and doing that right there. Okay, so we need to make sure that it is actually the pelvis moving over the femur. And I know that this is really kind of like tricky to grasp and understand and feel. Trust me, I know. But I also know that once you finally do, all of this back in here tends to open up. It gives you the ability to let your femur sit a little more squarely, or just a little more posteriorly sometimes in the acetabulum. So where your femur sits in your pelvis. That means that we're not getting as much stretch on the psoas in the front. We're not putting as much strain on the labrum, and we have a lot more mobility available to us, such as internal rotation. All right, so just a quick primer to keep in mind again about the hip shifting is that we want to make sure that we are coming over the femur, and then I like to think of it almost as like away from the femur. One of the easiest ways to kind of see hip shifting is from the back. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to show you first what it is not. All right, so sorry you have to look at my booty, but hopefully these bright neon pants will kind of help you see what's going on. So when I want to hip shift, if I am doing it for my right side, okay, what I don't want to do is this. I don't want to do that, where I'm just kind of going out to the side, because you can feel it. If you do this, you're not going to feel really anything in here, because you're getting around the movement. It's kind of like cheating the crux, okay? So we don't want to do that. Now, the other thing that we don't want to do when we're trying to hip shift is to just kind of turn at our spine here. So you can see right here, I'm just kind of getting more movement at the thoracic and lumbar spine, and I'm not really doing anything actually at my hip. When I get into a really good hip shift, this is what it is going to look like. On my right hip, I'm going to let that left side come down a bit, and then I'm going to come back up. I'm going to let the left side come down a bit, and then I'm going to come back up. I am in a hinge when I am doing a hip shift. I'm going to come down and up, and notice I'm not going out to the side. I'm also not really rotating through any of this or any of this right here. So I'm coming down, and I'm coming up, and I'm coming down, and I'm coming up. When I do this on the left side, it's the same thing. I'm going to come down and then up, and my left side is definitely tighter. Down and up, down and up. And you should be able to feel it right through here, that especially when you are shifting over the hip. So right here, when the knee is coming down, the opposite knee is coming down, it's gonna be right in here where you should feel this. And then you come up and you're staying in that hinge the whole time. All I want you to do is play around with that single leg hip shift and see if you can feel it. You can watch yourself in a mirror. That can be super helpful. You can also put a hand on your backside and feel like, oh, did I push my hand away? Or did I literally just like tuck under when I went to shift down into my hip? You can feel kind of the motion that's happening at your pelvis. It's enabling the femur to just sit better in the socket slightly because we are allowing the pelvis and all the muscles around the pelvis to just loosen up a bit. And a lot of times we really need that loosening up. All right, let me know if you have any questions. I know it's kind of tricky, but this is something that can really make a huge difference in your movement once you're able to feel it for yourself.